She was the head cheerleader.
What's up, baby?
And he was a star football player.
It's a classic high school love story. This beautiful cheerleader and this handsome jock at the top of their league.
It was like a budding storybook romance.
But there would be no happily ever after.
My daughter, I can't find her.
Something wasn't right.
Nobody knows what happened.
And the truth is almost too terrifying to believe.
She met someone online.
They had made plans to meet in person.
But was he who he claimed to be?
Sometimes we just don't know who people are.
Or would her killer be found in the least likely place?
He checked himself voluntarily into a psych ward.
Because look where my mind is going.
He had been looking into serial killers.
The medications took him to a dark place. He had no control over his anger.
Did she say anything? She said, please.
Please stop!
August 27th, 2018. It's a hot summer day in Missouri City, Texas, a sprawling suburban town of 70,000, a half-hour southwest of Houston.
We have a lot of people that are moving here. They want the big city feel, but with a small town atmosphere.
It's a friendly town. A lot of good people work and live here. Lots of restaurants, lots of entertainment.
There's so much room for opportunity and growth.
But sometimes, in the middle of all that growth, the wrong opportunity can arise. Around 7 o'clock that evening, Missouri City 911 receives a panicked call from a mother desperate to find her daughter.
A woman calls because her daughter hasn't returned home like she was supposed to.
The missing girl is 19-year-old Sabrina Herrera.
She had had lunch with her mother earlier that day.
And what made you think she was missing?
She was supposed to pick up my son from the bus stop, and she never got there.
The brother called their mother, and the mother then started to make phone calls.
She called her daughter repeatedly, but Sabrina never answered, nor did she call her back.
That's not like her.
She was very organized, very mindful, and so for her to not pick up her little brother from school, that's highly unusual.
She lived for work.
Sabrina!
When Sabrina's mother came home,
Sabrina!
she went to Sabrina's room and saw that her work uniform was still on her bed.
Sabrina's mom is frantic because Sabrina has a pattern of being on time and was very, very punctual.
She had no idea where her daughter was.
But she did have a way to find out.
Because they both had iPhones, they would share each other's location.
Her mom was able to use a GPS tracking device on her phone to pinpoint where her daughter was located.
Or so she'd thought.
I can't find her, but I found her car and all her belongings.
Her purse was still there, her phone was there.
The car keys are in there?
Yes.
I can imagine that fear just increasing, what's happening, what's happened to Sabrina.
Barely out of high school, Sabrina Herrera had big plans for her future.
At that young age, you're about to break out into the world.
She was getting ready to leave a world that was very comfortable and go into a world of the unknown, but she was ready to embrace it.
She'd already proven that she was up to the challenge.
At the beginning of her junior year, she had transferred to a new high school.
As you can imagine, being a teenager transferring to a new school, that's tough.
But not for Sabrina.
Hey, good morning. Hey, see you later. Everyone who met Sabrina instantly fell in love with her. She had the best personality.
She actually flourished, and she made the most of her experience.
She was on the high school dance team. She was captain of the cheerleading team.
Hey.
She also found a new boyfriend.
It started out just as teenage puppy love.
They were high school sweethearts.
A year older than Sabrina, Troy Parker was already a big man on campus.
Troy was an outstanding athlete. He was very good in what he did on the football field.
He had some aspirations to become a professional football player.
He's at the top of the hierarchy status in high school. He's a jock, so everybody naturally admires him.
It's a classic high school love story. Sabrina was the high school cheerleader, and Troy was the captain of the football team.
They were like a star couple.
It seemed like fate that they would end up together.
It's not uncommon for teens to really pour into each other, to really lose themselves in each other. You're my world. You know, this is us. I can see myself with you forever. Two popular kids in school, just feeling like they had it all. We have each other. This is it.
The couple stayed together even after Troy graduated.
What started as a high school romance blossomed, and this relationship that she had with Troy was her first real, mature, adult-type relationship.
Once she graduated, Sabrina started taking classes at a Houston community college.
She was thinking about being a nurse.
She wanted to help people. She wanted to serve. That speaks volumes to her character.
She also took a job at a local grocery store.
She's working a full-time job. She's getting a regular paycheck. She's got courses where she sets her own schedule. She can pretty much do what she wants to do at this time in her life.
And what she wanted most of all was Troy.
Troy was very supportive of Sabrina. It was hard for her to see herself without him in her life because this was starting to be that type of relationship where you start making plans for a family and a future.
After I get my nursing degree, we should definitely talk about having kids.
Really?
Yeah.
While Troy's plan of playing pro ball didn't pan out, he encouraged Sabrina to pursue her dreams.
This is going to be a fairy tale union, and they were going to grow up and have a family and have that storybook marriage.
Sabrina was over the moon.
But now, just 1 month into her freshman year of college, the teen has gone missing, and her mother has found Sabrina's car abandoned.
It was parked at a dead end in a quiet street in a neighborhood approximately 2 miles from her home.
Her phone is here, her wallet, and her keys.
And there's no sign of her daughter.
She knew that something was wrong.
When police arrive a few minutes later, they find everything as Sabrina's mom reported.
The keys to the car were still there. Her wallet was there, her phone.
They ultimately decide this couldn't be a robbery. There's something else going on.
But this isn't a missing persons case either.
I didn't check the trunk.
At a suggestion of the mother, the officer pops the trunk. It does not open all the way at first, so he has to go back and actually lift it up.
Oh my God, Sabrina!
Within that trunk laid Sabrina Herrera.
That's my baby, Sabrina!
19-year-old Sabrina Herrera was making a great start in life.
She had a lot going for herself.
She's got a great job. She's going to good school.
She was also in a long-term relationship with her high school boyfriend, Troy Parker.
They've been talking about saving up for a house and starting a family.
They were a happy couple, a football player and a cheerleader. It's one of those things that should have turned out to be a fairy tale with a happy ending.
Instead, Sabrina's story has ended in a nightmare.
Oh my God, Sabrina!
Police have found Sabrina inside the trunk of her car.
She's not breathing. She is deceased.
At this point, it's no longer a missing persons report. Now we know it's a homicide.
That's my baby, Sabrina!
And her mother knows too.
The grief and anguish at that moment is unbelievable.
Her mother may have to relive that over and over because those images may never leave.
While patrol officers wait for homicide detectives to arrive, they face the difficult task of keeping Sabrina's mother away from her daughter.
She's frantic, and she's trying to get to Sabrina.
Sabrina!
It's very important that police keep everyone away because the police need to preserve any evidence that's left.
Her mom was put in a patrol car and taken down to the station to wait and give a formal statement to the police.
When homicide detectives arrive on the scene, they begin by examining Sabrina's body.
It was determined that her cause of death was a result of strangulation.
They saw the markings on her neck.
The evidence also suggests she was knocked down and then attacked from behind.
The detectives found a shoe print on the back of Sabrina's shirt.
The attacker had stepped on her back for leverage when he strangled her.
Although prior to being overpowered, it appears that Sabrina had done her best to fight back.
Sabrina had defensive marks on her right hand and her eye was bruised.
Those marks were clear indication that she was fighting for her life.
Detectives are also able to determine an approximate time of death.
Sabrina had been killed at least a few hours before her body was found.
But that's about all that detectives are immediately able to determine from the crime scene.
There was no other evidence associated with who could have caused this murder.
Although the scene does tell detectives a few other things about the crime.
There were these items that were still in the car, the purse and some other valuables. That indicated that this was not a robbery.
This was a direct attack against Sabrina.
Looking for more information, detectives begin knocking on doors in the area where the killer abandoned Sabrina's car.
One of the big tools for investigations is canvassing the area where the crime occurred to see if neighbors or if businesses have cameras.
Yeah, I think my camera looks right at that spot.
They did have video footage showing where Sabrina's car was parked at that dead end.
The video shows the car pulling to a stop exactly where it's found by police and a black male exiting the vehicle.
He parked the car at around 20 minutes after 3 and simply abandoned the vehicle.
It appears in the video that this male is holding a black bag as he's walking away.
He exited the frame in a hurry, heading toward a walking trail that led into the woods.
Unfortunately, the video quality is so low that the police are unable to obtain an accurate identity of this person.
The only thing that they had at that point was it was a black male.
Thank you. Could you email that to us?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Detectives turn next to Sabrina's mother back at the precinct.
The investigators had showed the video to Sabrina's mom to see if she could recognize the man who got out of the car.
The video is so far away that not even Sabrina's mother can identify who this person is.
All Sabrina's mother can do is walk detectives through her daughter's last known whereabouts before the murder occurred.
Her mom last saw Sabrina earlier in the afternoon at 1:30 p.m.
After they had lunch, Sabrina dropped her mom off at work.
Then she was supposed to swing back by the family's home.
Sabrina was supposed to go home because they had a little dog and she was supposed to feed and let that little dog out.
There was evidence that Sabrina did go home to let the dog out because the home's motion sensors showed activity between 1:48 and 2:04 p.m.
After tending to the dog, Sabrina was supposed to pick up her little brother, which was a routine that happened every day.
She did not show up to pick up her little brother.
After he wasn't picked up from school, Sabrina's brother reached out to their mom, letting her know that Sabrina didn't pick him up from school. So at this point, her mom is frantically contacting Sabrina.
Sabrina didn't call back. Sabrina would always call her mom back.
She knows at this point in time that she's supposed to be to work by 4 p.m., So she calls the grocery store where Sabrina works, and they haven't seen Sabrina either.
Detectives now have a window for when the crime occurred, but one big question remains.
Who would want to cause Sabrina harm?
Who would do this to such a beautiful and outgoing young girl?
While Sabrina's mom doesn't recognize the man in the video, detectives hope she can provide some clues.
The next step for police was to find out who was in Sabrina's circle. Was there anybody that they felt had a vendetta against Sabrina?
Everybody loved her.
She was a very giving young lady, very bright. She didn't have any enemies.
What about boyfriends? Was she seeing anyone?
Well, not anymore.
Sabrina's mom told police that Sabrina had broken up with Troy, her long-term boyfriend, a few weeks earlier.
The recent breakup raises an immediate red flag for detectives.
Was there trouble?
No, it wasn't like that.
It was their understanding. It had been mutual.
She felt that Sabrina and Troy were okay with that breakup, that they were going to mutually go their separate ways.
Plus, Sabrina's mom says that her daughter had recently told her about someone new.
His name was Brandon, and Sabrina met him online.
They were starting to get to know each other.
According to her mom, Sabrina and Brandon had been making plans to meet in person.
Well, did you know when they were supposed to meet?
No. All she ever told me was he seemed like a nice guy.
But could he also be a killer?
He had a great profile, but you never know what lies underneath.
Sabrina's family was concerned because of the fact that she met someone on social media. Her family was a little worried about, who is this person that you just met and that we don't know? Who is Brandon? Who is this new person on the scene? Because he's new, Sabrina's missing, and now she's dead.
Detectives investigating Sabrina Herrera's murder have just learned that the 19-year-old recently met a man online.
All she ever told me was he seemed like a nice guy.
Some of the dangers surrounding meeting people online is that you never really know who's on the other side of the computer.
You're not always guaranteed to be talking to who you think you're talking to.
The 19-year-old girl, especially as beautiful as she was, she would have been the perfect target for a predator online.
Did Sabrina ever show you any pictures of this guy?
No.
Sabrina's mom was not able to provide any more information to police officers other than the fact that this man's first name supposedly is Brandon.
We ultimately don't know who he is. There could be some deception.
Hoping to learn more about the mysterious Brandon, detectives turn to Sabrina's social media activity. Before she left, Sabrina's mom was able to provide them with the passwords to access her daughter's accounts.
Sabrina's mom was eager to do everything possible to help the investigation and learn who killed Sabrina.
Once they're able to see her messages, detectives quickly identify their suspect.
They find that she had been communicating with a man named Brandon Fuller.
Brandon was older. He's a 26-year-old man.
Maybe that's why Sabrina didn't share too many details about him with her mother.
But it's other details in Sabrina and Brandon's online chatting that catch the detectives' attention.
According to the messages between the two, on the day that Sabrina disappeared, she was finally supposed to meet him in person.
She's supposed to meet Brandon that day, and then Sabrina shows up missing and then dead.
Could it simply be a coincidence? Or could Brandon be their killer?
They wanted to know more about him, and they start looking into who Brandon was and his social media.
Almost immediately, his profile picture seems vaguely familiar.
His physique is similar to that of the individual in the surveillance camera found dropping off Sabrina's car.
Digging deeper only increases their suspicion.
There was gang-affiliated type posts, a lot of posts that just gave them cause for concern.
It's not entirely an act either.
When the police pull Brandon's background check, they find that he has been arrested on several occasions.
It's definitely a cause for concern.
Finding an address for Brandon in his criminal record, detectives set out to conduct an interview.
When the police arrive at this location, there's a woman living there who says that she doesn't know who Brandon is.
Who? I don't even know Brandon.
You mind if we take a look around?
Sure.
The woman says, I don't know a Brandon, I've never heard of a Brandon, and Brandon doesn't live here.
A quick glance around suggests she's telling the truth.
Yeah, I think we ought to put a call in on that one.
There's no sign that Brandon resides at this address.
Using Brandon's DMV records, police issue an alert for his vehicle.
The next morning, after the Be on the Lookout was issued, a patrol unit spotted a vehicle matching the description.
They pull the car over and ask him to come with them to the police department.
He's very combative, does not want to cooperate, and does not understand why police brought him in.
But his attitude changes when the detectives tell him why he's there.
Once he learns that Sabrina has been murdered, his entire tone changes.
She's dead? We was just supposed to go on a date. I just thought she stood me up.
Brandon felt like, well, maybe she just blew me off. And when he tried to call her, there was no response.
And that made you mad?
Not really.
Brandon tells police that they've only exchanged a few messages.
She made a post online, and I checked the profile, and I sent her a DM.
That was pretty much the extent of their communications.
So that's something you do often? You meet women online?
Wait, are you trying to pin this on me?
Brandon again becomes combative and says, I just met Sabrina. I wouldn't have any reason to harm her.
Am I under arrest?
No.
When they say no, Brandon tells police if they want to continue this conversation, they're going to have to get a warrant.
Then, as he turns to leave, Brandon says something that will shift the investigation into an entirely new direction.
I'm not the one you should be looking at.
He says you guys have the wrong guy.
You should be looking at Troy Parker.
Detectives investigating the murder of 19-year-old Sabrina Herrera have spent the last hour questioning Brandon Fuller, an older man she'd met online after breaking up with her longtime boyfriend, Troy Parker.
We was just supposed to go on a date. I just thought she stood me up.
Brandon seemed upset when the police told him Sabrina was dead, but he said he'd never met her in person.
Now, after detectives asked for an alibi, Brandon has stormed out of the interview.
Brandon eventually got to the point where it was, am I being arrested? If not, then you're gonna have to get a warrant to keep me here.
Police are concerned that Brandon's lack of helpfulness points to some type of guilt and that he was possibly involved in Sabrina's murder.
Detectives also aren't sure what to make of the last thing Brandon said as he walked out the door.
You should be looking at Troy Parker.
As he was leaving, he made a point to note that I'm not the one you should be looking at. You should be looking at her ex.
Detectives are surprised that he even knows about her ex. Had Sabrina told Brandon about Troy in their online chats?
Was it possible that Brandon knew something that the detectives didn't? Or was he just pointing his finger at Troy to take the heat off of himself?
Either way, detectives will need to follow up.
They want to take a look into Troy and see if there's any truth to the allegations made by Brandon.
Before detectives confront Troy, they reach out to other members of Sabrina's family with more questions.
Because Sabrina and Troy had been dating all through high school, Sabrina's family, in essence, watched Troy grow up as a member of their family.
No one had any anything bad to say about Troy, and many of them were shocked when they had broken up.
Sensing they could be chasing a false lead, detectives decide to go straight to the source.
At that point, they went to Troy's home.
Troy was still living with his parents, so it was easy for police officers to find him.
We need to ask you a few questions about Sabrina.
Yeah, I heard about what happened.
He seemed concerned, but he was very flat in his demeanor.
They also noticed that, same as Brandon, he had a similar height and build to the man in the surveillance video.
We heard that you and Sabrina had broken up.
A few weeks ago. We figured it was best.
Troy was clear that they had both agreed to go their separate ways and that he wanted to pursue football and that she had already started pursuing a career in nursing.
Troy says that their breakup was mutual and there were no hard feelings between the two of them, but he still cared about her.
Then he says something that catches their attention.
Well, when was the last time that you saw her?
She stopped by Monday afternoon.
Troy admits that he saw Sabrina a few hours before her body was found.
He said she dropped by his house to pick up a few of her things.
But she only stayed for like 15 minutes.
What did you do after she left?
Well, I had a game.
Troy said he went to go play football in Sienna Plantation.
The town of Sienna Plantation is about 20 minutes away from Troy's house.
He claimed he got there at a little after 3 o'clock.
Surveillance video from the crime scene had placed Sabrina's killer dumping her car at the same time.
Now, if what Troy was telling them was true, he couldn't have been the man in the surveillance video.
An alibi isn't all that Troy offers detectives.
Troy allowed police to look at his text messages.
Based on the messages, it appeared that the split really was amicable, just like everyone said.
There was nothing hostile between the two of them texting back and forth.
The texts also suggest he knew nothing about her death.
Police saw that Troy had texted Sabrina after she was found murdered.
Yeah, I was worried when she didn't text me back. I just kind of figured, maybe something was wrong with her phone.
The police, they're not having much reason to doubt Troy's version of events. He seems pretty genuine.
But they still need to check out his alibi, just to be certain.
Investigators went and spoke with Troy's teammates.
The police asked his friends, did Troy come and play with you? They corroborated, yes, he had gone to play with them.
However, their timeline differed from Troy's.
He showed up kind of late. About 4? About 4.
They said that Troy did play football, but it was after 4 p.m.
That hour difference could potentially change the game.
It gave him enough time to actually commit the murder.
Theoretically, Troy had time to abandon Sabrina's car and go back and play football at Sienna Plantation.
His alibi is falling apart.
There may be something he's not telling us.
And it isn't long before the detectives learn just what that something is.
Sabrina's cousin came by the station.
She has information that could be helpful.
Sabrina had confided in her that Troy had been abusive.
She didn't want to tell me, but I saw what he had done to her.
Detectives in Missouri City, Texas have not only discovered that Sabrina Herrera's ex-boyfriend, Troy Parker, may have had the time to murder the teenager. Her cousin has also come forward with a shocking allegation.
Sabrina's cousin tells the investigators that Sabrina confided in her and told her that Troy had been abusive during their relationship.
She let her know that Troy became very jealous and possessive.
The news takes detectives by surprise.
Sabrina's mom had nothing but nice things to say about Troy and the way that he treated Sabrina.
I don't think they knew.
Sabrina's cousin knew the truth about what was really going on when everyone else thought this was just the ideal relationship.
According to Sabrina's cousin, as the high school sweethearts grew older, they grew apart.
Relationships are up and down. It's not always the fairy tale we think it is.
When you're dealing with domestic violence, usually you can boil down the motive to a few things. One is simply control. The abuser likes to control their victim.
It starts with small things, maybe with verbal aggressions or bullying, and we think it's gonna stop, and we think we can control it. But more often than not, it escalates.
And too often, it escalates in silence.
A lot of teenagers are not reporting what's going on with them.
They don't want to cause problems. They want people around them to feel as though everything is okay.
Oftentimes, they may think it's about them and they deserve this.
Whatever the reason, Sabrina hadn't spoken up.
For any teen in an abusive relationship and keeping that to themselves, I would say find someone you trust, let someone know. Don't keep it to yourself. It can be embarrassing, it can be painful to open up and share that secret, but in the end, it will be worth it.
No one deserves to live in that type of hell. No one deserves to live in that type of torture. And if you are dealing with a situation like that, it's best to reach out to someone. And if you don't have someone to talk to, there are so many resources out there to help you.
Sabrina's cousin says she'd only learned the truth by accident.
She didn't want to tell me, but I saw what he had done to her.
She had these bruises on her legs, and her cousin asked her, "What's this about?" She lied at first.
Sabrina brushed it off and said she had failed.
That's nothing, it was an accident.
That does not look like an accident. What happened?
Sabrina's cousin could tell she was hiding something.
After pressing her a little bit, she was able to get it out of Sabrina that Troy had hurt her.
Sabrina also admitted it wasn't the first time.
The abuse had been getting more violent as the relationship went on.
You need to do something about it.
I know.
And that was the real reason why they broke up.
She just couldn't take it anymore.
When detectives follow up with Sabrina's family, they're unable to confirm her cousin's story.
Sabrina's family told police that they had no idea this was going on, and that if they would have known that Troy was being abusive, they would have helped Sabrina in the relationship sooner.
Sabrina's cousin was the only one who had an honest view of what was going on in the relationship.
Sabrina was never able to confide in her family the extent of the abuse that was happening in her relationship with Troy.
Although in hindsight, there may have been a hint that something was wrong.
Towards the end of their relationship, they did notice Troy and Sabrina fighting more, but it was on again, off again. They would fight, they would separate, then they would get back together. So Sabrina's family didn't think too much of it.
Their sights firmly set on Troy, detectives start digging into the teenager's past.
When the police run a background check on Troy, they didn't find an arrest record.
Troy has no criminal history.
However, they did find something that caught their attention.
3 months prior to Sabrina's murder, Troy had checked himself into a mental institution.
Troy checked himself into the hospital voluntarily for NSSI, non-suicidal self-injury, hurting himself without the intention to kill himself.
To get more details about Troy's mental health issues, detectives talked to doctors at the hospital that treated him.
The staff told them that Troy was battling depression, that Troy had cut himself.
He had sliced his wrists.
We didn't think it was a serious attempt to kill himself.
They didn't believe that Troy was suicidal, but that he wanted to feel something.
They said Troy spent the night at the hospital and he was discharged the next day.
We gave him some medication for his depression, and he checked out the next morning and never came back.
He never received the help that he needed to battle the mental health issues that he was dealing with.
With their suspicion of Troy increasing, detectives return to the station and contact his cell provider.
Troy had showed them his text to Sabrina, but there may have been other, potentially incriminating information in his phone.
Police get a subpoena to obtain Troy's phone records. They also are able to obtain his internet records.
Since Troy lives with his parents, detectives also subpoena the video from his family's home security system.
There was a camera in the front and then the camera in the back.
Typically, our home security cameras are rolling all day and night. We want to make sure that our homes feel secure. We want to know what's going on.
The whole purpose of even having a security camera is to capture everything.
But when police review the footage from the Parkers' house, they see that wasn't the case.
What the police noted is that for the date of the offense, the front camera was turned off at approximately, I believe, 11 a.m.
It doesn't start recording again until 8:11 p.m.
The camera at the rear continued recording, but the footage it captured was even more suspicious.
While the camera was running, there was something obscuring the lens.
You couldn't see who was coming in or out of that home. And when the officer rewinded the video, he noticed that on August the 26th, you see Troy Parker take a red towel and cover that particular camera.
There was something that Troy was trying to hide during that time period.
But he can't hide what he's been doing on his computer.
Some concerning things popped up in his search history.
For example, extradition laws.
He had looked up things like how to get a passport, what countries don't have an extradition treaty.
And he was also researching how to rob a bank.
It was clear to detectives that Troy was going to be on the run.
But was he planning something else first?
The most disturbing thing that police found in Troy's search history was that Troy had been researching serial killers.
Was Sabrina's murder the start of a killing spree?
Detectives investigating Sabrina Herrera's murder have learned her ex-boyfriend, Troy Parker, has been researching guns, serial killers, and countries without an extradition treaty with the U.S.
It appears that Troy was planning to commit a murder and how to get away with it.
At this point, police have enough to get an arrest warrant.
Based on his search history, they were worried he may kill again.
But before they can get a judge to sign the warrant, they get an unexpected call.
They received the phone call at approximately 11 p.m. that night. It was from Troy's brother.
Troy's brother said Troy has more information for police.
15 minutes later, Troy and his family arrive at the police station. The officers lead Troy into the interrogation room.
Once detectives finish reading Troy his rights, they get straight to the point.
Troy tells officers he wants to confess to a murder.
He proceeds to tell them that he was the one who killed Sabrina.
So what happened? What's wrong with it?
He tells the police that, yes, Sabrina did come to my house that day.
And so she voluntarily came over? I mean, yeah, I asked you to come over. Okay.
There's no way she went to that house thinking, my life's going to end today. No way. Despite the abuse, she did not think that he would go that far.
But Troy says that while she was there, they had begun to argue.
He and Sabrina had gotten into a fight about their relationship.
He said that he was tired of Sabrina telling him lies. He was sick of it.
What kind of things did she lie about? Talking about she going with a girl, talking about she twice with her mom, and she's going with somebody else.
Why are you always disrespecting me?
He felt like she was cheating on him.
How do you know she was with other guys? Because I would ask you, and then I would see it on like social media or something.
We broke up!
Sabrina thought they had broken up, but apparently that hadn't gotten through to Troy.
You know what? Get out!
Troy, serious?
Get out!
Troy said that he was so angry and so mad at Sabrina that he told her to get out.
I'm gonna leave. He's like, no, I don't want to leave. But I was like, come on, you gotta leave. Then she wouldn't.
But it was too late.
I could feel like my body just, like it was just getting hot, like my body's just getting hot.
As Sabrina is leaving the house, Troy begins to feel overwhelmed with anger.
Where were we at then? We was in the kitchen. In the kitchen? And then that's where it happened.
In that moment of anger, he saw a bungee cord on top of the refrigerator.
He grabbed the bungee cord and he began to strangle her.
Troy, look! Stop!
I just, make a damn cluster, so my ears to get in.
Troy admits that Sabrina didn't die easily.
Troy told the officers that at some point in time, he stopped strangling Sabrina. And at that point, Sabrina was still alive.
Did she say anything? She said, please.
At that point, he thought, should I stop? But then he said he knew what he had to do. And he continued to strangle her until Sabrina was dead.
How did she move? Like, she just kind of twitched. So did you do it some more after that? How long did that all that take? Probably several minutes. Yeah.
Troy says that once he was sure Sabrina was dead, he tried to hide what he'd done.
First, he took the red towel that detectives seen him use to cover up their surveillance camera in the backyard outside.
Then he came back in and dragged Sabrina's body out to her car and put it in the trunk.
Then he drove around the neighborhood, looking for a place to get rid of the body.
I just drove down the street and I just found a place that was kind of dead end.
That fits with the surveillance video showing Troy parking and fleeing from the scene.
What'd you do then? I just walked away.
Troy said that after he left the car with Sabrina's body in the trunk, he went home and he burned the bungee cord, the gloves, and his pants in the fire pit in the backyard.
However, while Troy admitted to trying to cover up the murder, he denied planning it ahead of time.
Was it just something that you had been thinking about? I used to try not to think much day to day because I don't know how long my mind is. What do you think should happen to you? What? I should die.
Most crimes of passions, their conscience gets to them. It starts to eat away.
At the end of the interview, detectives take Troy into custody.
The police arrested Troy for murder, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse.
But the investigation isn't over.
Troy also consented to a search of his home, and police officers were able to obtain corroborating evidence that matched with Troy's story of the events that took place.
They found the red towel that had been placed over the camera.
Detectives also find the murder weapon.
The police locate the fire pit and they find the burnt remains of the bungee cord.
And in Troy's bedroom, they make an unexpected discovery.
When the police investigate Troy's room, they find evidence that an assault had taken place. They find that the door has been removed from its hinges. They find punched holes. They also find 2 pocket knives stabbed into the sheetrock.
The damage is physical evidence of Troy's disturbed psychology.
Police knew at that point Troy's state of mind had to be very violent.
There was definitely something going on with Troy's mental state that no one was talking about. Sabrina's family had known Troy for 5 years, so for his mental health to never come into question or to never be discussed, it's very alarming.
But will Troy's precarious mental state stand in the way of a conviction?
Based on the evidence and the covering up cameras, his lawyer would have a hard time proving that this was an act of insanity.
There were also his actions after the murder, both attempting to cover it up and ultimately confessing.
He's obviously feeling remorseful, knowing that he did something wrong. A trial is for someone who is trying to prove their innocence. Troy has already acknowledged his guilt and acknowledged that what he did was wrong.
So, in October of 2019, Troy agrees to a plea deal.
In exchange for pleading guilty, he receives a reduced sentence of 45 years in prison.
By taking a plea deal, it allows him to present himself as a citizen who has taken accountability for his actions and allowing the justice system to give him a fair shot. It gives him a chance at life after prison. He was 20 years old. 45 years allows him to be released at prison at the age of 65.
There's no number that this defendant can get that's gonna bring your loved one back. He could get 99 years in prison, he can get life in prison. You might feel good for a little bit, but afterwards, your baby girl, she's not coming back.
Although friends and family hope that Sabrina's story and Troy's can help others.
Dating violence in young teens, unfortunately, is very common, but it goes unreported. And mental health, unfortunately, is still very taboo, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And I know that's a touchy subject, but I think it's important as a community and as families, we have those conversations about mental illness. Whether they're uncomfortable, whether they paint us in the best light, it's important that we discuss those things.
Otherwise, the cost may be more than we can bear.
So much hurt and pain reverberates, not only through the families, but through the community.
Sabrina was a wonderful young lady. She was loved. You could tell that when Sabrina died, a piece of them died too.
She was cherished by many, she was loved by her family, and she had a legacy to leave the world.